Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Teacher Kaligodoto Njige, or Teacher Kadonji, the Manju of Literature, and the young African writer, and also the world journalist of literary books from Tanzania, Africa. Dear listeners of Teacher Kaligodoto Njige channel, I have brought you the novel analysis called Mr. Johnson by Joyce from Donegal Island. This novel, written in 1999 by Joyce. The novel is all about the Africa. It's all about Africa, especially on the issue of imperialism or colonialism in Africa. Joyce inserts the Africans were static and not dynamic. That's why he wrote this novel to make aware the Africans on the issue of cultural issues, political issues, and economic issues. Also, this novel is all about the main character, who is Johnson, and also it is a direct title because it expresses the lives of main characters, who is Johnson. In Mr. Johnson's African's mind, the value and norms of the British subject because of hegemonic power relations that shape the space of colonial encounter. Although there are certain binary opposition, the term hegemonic play an important role in suggesting the power of ruling class, in convincing other class, thinking that their interests are the interests of all, a form of power in which domination is exercised not by force, by persuasion. The Africans wittingly insert the British, and they think the British are superior to them. Mimicking the white value, the Africans become hybrid personalities, or in between class, as Macaulay in his treatise Minute on India Education suggests in the context of India a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in tastes, opinion in normal and intellect. In a similar way, the Africans, especially Johnson, has become a class of persons African in blood and color, but in English tastes, opinion in morals and intellect. The linguistic and the cultural hybridity that manifests in the personality of Johnson, the protagonist of the novel, can be interpreted in the light of mimicry of the white value. The colonial experience has caused the colonized to perceive themselves as inferior to the colonizers. Colonial education and cultural colonization have presented them with its rich culture as a word of order, discipline, success, and achievement. As a result, the natives considered their own culture, customs, and tradition, religion, and race to be inferior to those of their masters and try to identify themselves with an empire. Since they are away from original homeland, their own original tradition and religions have become meaningless to them, and thus they cannot identify themselves with those remote rules and codes. However, as they are different from the matter in cultural, traditional, racial, and religious background, they can never successfully associate themselves with the colonizer either. They suffer from dislocation, placelessness, fragmentation, and loss of identity. They become mimic men who imitate and reflect the colonizer lifestyle, values, and views. Colonization has brought together in Africa two very different cultures, African culture and the European culture. In some ways, European culture was more advanced than the African. The Africans have assimilated something of this culture they should not reject the good elements which it contains. Therefore, the European culture dominates the native culture in one way or the other. Cato views the themes of Mr. Johnson is the effect of the imposition of an alien code of morals and manners upon a native culture. Mr. Johnson is a character who we can see such effect. Therefore, the novel concerns the collision between civilization, between communities, between religions, between groups, and even between individuals. Since Mr. Johnson is a representation of two cultures, African and British, it also concerns close cultural relations, written the liberal humanist tradition on themes that explains personal relations among individuals, which are cultural, discrepant, religiously polarized, and politically opposed. Mr. Johnson neither can be uprooted from his African culture nor full be attacked to English culture. Johnson, the black clerk, working under the British officer Ludwig, initiated into white culture from the very beginning of the novel, influenced by white culture. He describes other Africans, especially his beloved, later his wife, Bam, as savage, and want to civilize her. When he sees her at the fells, "Oh, Bam, you are only a savage girl. Here you do not know how happy how I will make you. I will teach you to be civilized lady, and we shall do not work at all." He repeatedly describes her as foolish and an Christianity girl who he wants to civilize and Christianized. He thinks the British culture is superior to African culture, ignores the African culture and people, and considers himself being educated and civilized. Though Johnson defined himself to be an Englishman, the white especially Bloor hates him. Bloor is senior to Ludwig. Boehmer, a post-colonial critic, describes that there is not a harmonious relationship between Africa and the Europeans. He pointed out a gulf between them. The Westernizer constructs such a gulf by describing them, the Africans teaching them, ruling over them, and setting them. He also says that Johnson is doomed between white and black because he is as an exile from southern Nigeria, and also takes a doomed attempt to Europeanize himself in the image of Ludwig, who he devoted as his savior and intimate friend. For example, Boehmer criticized he is also an exile from southern Nigeria and thus appear doubly ridiculous from the point of view of both the whites and local Hausa. The action concern is always already doomed attempt to Europeanize himself in the image of the Ado Ludwig. When Ludwig comes in his office after his marriage to take over, Bloor tells him all the gospel. The Emil is playing up again. They ought to be sacred. I'm afraid you will soon be without a clerk. The sooner you will get rid of him, the better. He is the worst type, probably dangerous too, a complete imbecile, but quiet, capable of dubbing the self. Bloor gives him the title of Muslim ruler. He also recommends Ludwig to sack Johnson. Moreover, he accuses Johnson as a thief. In fact, Johnson is a temporary clerk still on probation called upon on emergence from a mission school. The same man whom the title work is given by Ludwig's wife, Celia, and the other white characters cannot see the gulf the whites are creating. He tries to associate with them, though they try to dissociate. All the time he imagines that the uncivilized boyish girl. Bam accepts his proposal of marriage because of his educated and civilized manners, as can be observed in the following address. Oh, but Mr. Benjamin, my Bam is most beautiful, clever girl. You can think. First time she sees me, she says, Mr. Johnson, I agree. Oh, you don't? I don't like these savage men. I like civilized man. Mr. Johnson, she says, you good, nice government man. Me government lady. I love you with all my heart. We live happy, loving couple all the time, every day. Page 27 up to page 28. In other words, Johnson described what Bam seems to say to him, to his friend Benjamin, influenced by the white culture. He positioned himself in the white mannerism as if he were a British subject. He has high pride in Englishness that is associated with clothes, country, king, marriage, rituals, and the like. The district officer, Ludwig, whom he from the beginning to the end of the novel addresses as his friend and savior, despite of the fact that there is short of Ludwig in the beginning. Johnson becomes very happy when they comes to know that Ludwig has come to his native place, but his friend Agile suspects that Ludwig might take him to prison because he could not pay his debt to many natives. In a reply to it, Johnson says that Ludwig seems to say him in the following manner: he, my friend, soon as he see me, he smile and say, why it died you, Mr. Johnson, is you still here? Then he shake my hand and say, God bless you, Mr. Johnson. I agree for you. I pray for you. This means that both of them like each other. He believes that Ludwig would never harm him. Moreover, Ludwig had given him some drinking in the New Year. He also described what Ludwig is like. He thinks that Ludwig is not only his friend, but also his savior. Johnson compared Ludwig with Lamb of God. Jesus, he thinks of Ludwig as holding superior position like God, an African is holding inferior position like devil. Thus, he initiated into white culture, though Johnson is initiated into white culture. He couldn't leave his native culture. He is loyal to the Britishers and at the same time to those native Emil. Johnson secretly copies the letter of empire and gives them to the Emil, which will help Emil to rule the native. He misuses his position in British company. He appoints a Lord Boy, illegal to collect Lord Man. Do not enter Zungo Man in Zungo Cash Book and the like, as Allen put it. We are shown in this novel primitive peoples confronted with a new and almost whole unintelligible civilization taking what they want from the white man's religion and ways of life, making it a new thing satisfying to them, but quite baffling to the white administrator and the missionaries. Johnson is able to marry Baum and get respect from the native because of his affinity of English education, religion, and the ways of life, but he uses English virtues only to satisfy his interest, forgetting its essence. As a result, it becomes a shock to the English. Furthermore, while Johnson is spending his day in Zungo after Golap fires him from his store, he says, I stay too long on the road. Allah, what the God of lords, a lord headman, who is he? No, but of course, Mr. Ludwig depended on me and I couldn't go away from him. Page 231. From this speech, we can say that Johnson, who claimed himself as an Englishman, has still some trait of Muslim. Together with Ludwig, Johnson helps to build up Ludwig's Lord. The Lord symbolizes for him a bridge of communication that joined Africans and the British. Black and white, and South and North. Johnson, like other British people, believes that Lord will help to increase trade by 10 times, though the Native people claim that the Lord will bring Western influence that will collapse and spoil them. The following Rudbeck blames other native people by saying, "Oh, yes, say, we want a good road in Ifada, a motor road way up north to all these bush people. Get plenty, share, barter." Johnson wants to civilize the native people by building up the road, which will provide benefit to the bush people. He also contributes some idea as to how to build the road as described below. Or say, I think perhaps if you make it like game for them, get plenty drums, give them plenty beer. These pagan people like game. In other words, Johnson argued that if he turns labor into game, providing them the entertainment of drums, music, and songs, the man will sing out and work hardly, knowing that they are working. Previously, it is alleged that the Lord will finish before rain season, but the lack of man and laborers, there are remaining no chance of completing the Lord before the give time. However, Johnson insists that they will finish the Lord before the rain season. For example, he says perhaps they come for beer, so he make a good play. Then we finish this year. This is a European center belief made upon other native people, thinking that they are dependent to civilized people like he. He also inspired the native bush people to build the Lord by acting different plays, as singing, dancing, digging, and cutting. Using such tricks, he completes the Lord in time. When the Lord's work is finished, their friendship also seemed to come to an end for Rudbeck. On the other hand, Johnson believed in friendship with Rudbeck even upon to the time to his death. For example, he says Rudbeck at the last hour of his life, the time when he is prepared for hanging, "I know fit knowing nothing about it." Johnson, thinking of Rudbeck's wife, Leah, as a civilized woman, he believes that his wife Bam will be civilized when she gets into contact with Celia. He becomes very happy when he knows that Celia is coming to Africa because he has to civilize his wife, and he thinks Celia will help him to civilize his wife. Around this time, Johnson gives long description to Bam concerning Celia's arrival in following words. He wants to civilize her not only by himself but also in presence of Celia, since Bam has become government-led after her marriage to him. She has beliefs must be like Celia. Johnson forces Bam to put on white dresses while he is taking his wife to be introduced, but Bam refuses to put on the dress. At that time, he scolds her, saying, "But why you silly girl? The government lady is waiting. You don't want her to think you're a savage bush girl." Johnson's vision of civilized women is associated with Christianity, as described. "I think all dream when women have too good Christianity heart, them born Christianity." He expresses his when he talks to Golab, who says Johnson that his wife Matumbi is also an civilized woman, since she is an African. She both believe that only Christianity-born women can be good women. Johnson even described African traditional marriage ceremony, rituals, and celebrated his marriage to Bam in Christian style. For example, he argued these savage people think I make savage wedding like bush people. They never understand Christian marriage. Johnson asked his friend Benjamin to read the Bible for his marriage ceremony. Benjamin too reads the Bible well with great enjoyment of words, and orders Johnson by saying, "Give her the ring, Mr. Johnson." He performed a marriage party in the Western style. He celebrated his Christian marriage because he thinks that if he performed his marriage in Christian style, His love for Bam will last long and his wife will be happy too. But his marriage is not pure a Christianity one. Both cultural traditions are mingled in it. Johnson loses his patience when his Bible part delays to come. He, with a jar and Ludwig, his cook, flies off to fetch the bride. Bam is waiting with her family, and they raise loud shouts and scream when Ajah and Johnson appear and claim her. This is a usual ceremony meant to show she is being carried off by force. This is their native cultural tradition. Furthermore, the proper Christian marriage should have taken place in the church as the presence of Father, but Johnson takes the help of his co-worker Benjamin, and the place is post office. He only celebrates Christian marriage, wears white dress like English people, but also places English and English rituals, and also it is king. In other words, he seems to adopt England as his own country, and the King of England is his own king. For example, he expresses his vision of Englishness by saying English is my country, or English my home, or on the big water. That King of England is my king. He dares man the world. His heart is to being, oh England my home, or on the big water. This question indicates that he thinks himself to be English, and like Ludwig, he also wants to educate his fellow Africans and make them civilized. He fashions himself in relation to European culture and manner, though he is Nigeria black crack. When Johnson meets Bam in the fair at Fada River, he pays much money as a narrator. Says he gives her 3 pen piece instead of pence. His idea of Englishness is associated with the belief of spending much. He sells man only have gold, being known as a great washwoman. Johnson's downfall starts with String come to Father to replace Ludwig. Ludwig is returning home as his wife is sick. String sack Johnson and Audu. On the charge of embezzlement, Johnson then joined his job in the store, which is run by Golap. Golap is a retired policeman. He is also a white. Golap appointed him in laborer's salary. Golap advised Johnson not to gather anyone in his compound as he was going to learn hunt with String. Johnson, in the absence of his boss, gathered his friend and started drinking, singing, and dancing. The village is full of noise. Suddenly, Golap appears in the ground. The crowd disperses. He suddenly punches Johnson at the center while defending himself. Johnson happens to hit Golap, who falls down. Johnson is ousted from the store and is forced to live in Zungo. Johnson wears on the white dresses. He also forces his wife to wear on white dresses. I already said about that. So, Johnson is an African crack. Already I've said he organized himself by mimicking white culture, dress, and other ceremonies. They mime European culture because he thinks it is superior to African culture. He wants to civilize his wife Bam. Right. Okay. Joyce was one of the most prominent literary figures in the year of 1940s who had written many novels, narratives, poems, and also political and philosophical texts during his lifetime. He wrote 4 novels using an African background in the year of 1930s, of which Mr. Johnson is the most important one. In this novel, he has made a vigorous attempt to present Africa and the life of Africans. His description of character, such as Ludwig, Golap, Ting, Celia, Johnson, Bam, and others, however, show that he constructs Africa not as it really is, but rather as it is perceived through colonial stereotyping. In other words, in binary opposition, like civilized Europeans and civilized Africans share is characterization in the novel, an opposition that can be seen in this description of Johnson, who is often portrayed both uncivilized as a liar, is different from Rudebeck, who is portrayed as civilized and truthful. In other words, Kell uses the stereotype of Africanist discourse, which are based on binary opposition, to represent Africa. Some of this might come from his experiences working as a colonial officer and later as an army lieutenant in Nigeria. This is to say that instead of representing Africa as it is, he represents it through binary stereotype of Africanist, which discourse sees Africa and Africans as lacking, uneducated, and uncivilized, as opposed to civilized European model. Mr. Johnson is the central character in Kell. Mr. Johnson exposes the mimicry of colonial culture, including its language and other practices. When a person starts living in a new culture, leaving his original one, he or she has to experience a lot of traumatic situations. Mr. Johnson, even his not having a first name but being called either by his spllations, Mr., or by his job, Craig, make a strong point. Because he has some education from missionaries and speaks something closer to English than the prevailing pidgin. Kell treated the close cultural relationship between the English and the Africans. The cultural connection is apparent in the life of people. Johnson also implies in the fact that full expresses identity is not possible in such a situation. Johnson tries to initiate into British culture by imitating British way of life. Though the imitated British way of life, he cannot internalize it with his own, the impact of which he goes on doing many activities which are thought to be illegal. As a result, he is given death penalty by Rudebeck, who thinks Johnson's activities to be savage, and he, as a civilized man, kills him. That is the end of the novel analysis, Mr. Johnson by Joyce Kell. Thank you for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment below this video.